So good evening. It's good that we have the Sabbath day and we can be more relaxed like in other days. And I want to repeat a little bit that we might understand what we are studying about. We want to know and understand the way God created us. He created us in a certain way, the same way like this pen was created to have a function. And that function must have a beginning and an end. And what makes us in disease, as medical doctors, to bring us into problems is that we don't know the beginning of humanity. We have the disease. The disease is at the end of a process. We know that most of our diseases must come through the cortex because there is the beginning of man physically, but man does not begin in his body. Man begins in his mind. So tonight I want to try to give an overview of this structure. So we start in the cortex. From here, all the nerves go down. And they go down, of course, into the limbic system. And there we have chemistry. And of course, then the nerves switch to the other side. And so the whole human is functioning. And all that is beginning to function is through electricity in the cortex. And we know that the electricity, the brain cannot do unto himself. Sugar can either do it, so it must be someone that does the impulse there and gives the command. And we saw this and explored this, and I gave evidences that there must be a mind, a spiritual part in the human being up there that commands the brain. And so the brain is commanded by decisions. And we saw, how many decisions do we have? 2. Only 2. It is a yes and a no. It's a yes and a no. You see, that's very simple. In our subconscious, we don't need more decisions. Just and yes and no. So when we want to eat, we just need to know yes or no. And then the second idea is when you took the decision to eat, you must ask what to eat when you have a full of table. And then you again evaluate and say, oh, this is more tasty or more healthy, that's more gain. And then you say yes to that. So each decision that we take is yes and no, no matter what we decide. Because the body does not understand any other impulse, no other information. The body is just like the hardware of the computer. He understands only yes and no. And some of us are more acquainted with the computer than, and we know that software can be put into hardware only by electricity or no electricity. Yes and no. In the same way, all things function in nature. So software can be put into hardware only by yes and no. So every decision that we do is just a yes and no. But now we saw last night that if we have only yes and no to decide, how many criteria do we have to decide? There must be only 2 criteria. Yes? And the two criteria is the one we have for the yes and the other we have for the no. So the one criteria that we have for the yes is gain. And gain, we always say yes to gain. So you know why you came here tonight? To gain or to lose? Gain. So that's why you said yes, and you came. And of course I do the presentation because I think it is a gain to do it. If I would know that it would be a loss, what would I do? I wouldn't do it. I would say no to it. Yeah? So the two criteria that we have to decide on are just gain and loss. And if we put something into gain, we'll do it. And we put something into loss, we don't do it. But before we put something into gain and loss, we need to evaluate what is a gain and what is a loss, or how do I get to the gain and how do I get to the loss. And that is done by that which runs behind us, so to say, that God put there, that is the law that governs everything that functions. You know, there is, like I said, there is a hierarchical construction of the laws in nature, and there is one that is basic. We find it in everything. No matter it's the functioning of a leaf of a tree, or if it's the functioning of a human, of an animal, or even I would say an angel, or something technical, it all works by one and the same law that is there at the basic of everything. And that's why I have this term, law of life. And that's why I write it in blue, you know, in the Bible, law is blue. So there is something like you know how to get to the gain and how to avoid the loss. Because we never can say yes to loss. We must say absolutely no to loss. I explained this yesterday, and for those who have not been here, so you can see online or at the YouTube channel, so that you get acquainted with how that works. So the law of life is there, and it checks our motivation. That is, the motivation is that what puts the question, why should I say yes? Or for whom should I say yes or no? Yes? For whom am I doing what I do? That's motivation. Motivation comes before you put anything into action. The motivation says, for whom do I do what I do? For whom do I do it? Okay? And then before the motivation, there comes the question, in whom do I trust? And before I trust, I must know who am I. Okay? Those are those questions that I found out that they go one after another. So until here, we have, so to say, this is the heart of man. This is all subconsciously going down. And above here, we have that part of the spirit that is that is conscious. Okay? And we know, and we saw that information always comes from outside. So here comes the information. And now that information comes into your consciousness. All decisions that we do, we must be conscious of. You know that? Just the process of decision making is unconscious. But you cannot take a decision when you are not at a certain level conscious. Okay? So the first thing is, it starts in the conscious. And I give you a small example. Not so long ago, it was in June, I woke up in the morning and I was on my walk. I want to go out to have my time with God. I usually have it out in nature. And so I wake up, and on the way out, I remembered that my mother-in-law missed her pocket, you know, where she had her wallet. And she was 2 days before with my wife with the car, and they searched it the day before, but they didn't find it. So I said, well, they don't know how to look, so I go to look. But I didn't take the key from the car. I just went out, and when I was out, I remembered, so I went to the car before I went out in the wood, and I look through the window in the car because I didn't take the keys. I said, maybe I see it through the window. In a moment, I see that what I see in the window, it's not a pocket, but I see in the trunk of the car of my wife, the next moment I look into, I have a negative emotion. You see it and you feel it. Now, whenever you see something and you feel it, it must have gone through all the steps that we have seen here. But those you do in 4.5 or even less milliseconds. You see it and you feel it. And you think that you see something, you might think, I didn't think anything, did I? What did I see that immediately made in me an emotion that put me under pressure? And I had the idea, now I have to go back into the house to talk to my wife because of what I have seen in the car. Now you guess, what is the gain or the loss that I saw? You never are under pressure when you see a gain to think, now I have to go and wake her up and talk to her. Now, before I am going into the house back, from the car to the house door, the Lord remembers me. I made a commitment with Him, or I asked Him for a favor. I said, Lord, whenever I get upset on something, before I speak to that person, I speak with you about it, so that you can clear up my understanding. And you see, I did this commitment, I don't know how long ago, but I never succeeded. Because it was too fast, the pressure that was in me. But this time I had a few walks from here to that door, from the car to the entrance of the house, and so there I could have a little bit of time to think. And I thought to myself, I said, if I am not doing it now, when will I enter to do it? So I was already with the hand on the handle of the door when I decided I go first into the woods and talk to God, that He should make clear for me, what is it that makes me that bad emotion and feeling. Now I tell you what I saw in the car. Nothing big. It was just a few packs. There was a box, quite a big box, and on that box there were a few packs of cat food, food for the cat. Now, I assumed that the whole box is full of cat food, yes, and I saw those boxes on the big box, and I know that we have in the garage cat food for at least a few months, if not a year. Now, you in America, you're used to take big boxes. In Germany, you don't take big boxes. You just buy a little thing. And now you understand what is in me, do you? You can realize that I saw something, and now there is a lot of prejudgment in my mind. You know that? That's those prejudices that you already have. You put a person in a certain place, and the moment that person does that thing, you have a bad emotion. Because you see it, and you don't like it. So my wife is there in that corner where she buys too much. Who has not that experience? As man sometimes. Yeah? At least in your opinion, because who brings the money home? You understand? So let us go through the steps. I know we didn't do all of this in this series, but you can go back and see the other series so that you can know what I'm talking about. But what is the first thing? What is the core of sinful nature? Because we all know we are born with the flesh. And the Bible says that there is something in us that must die, that must be cut off. And that's our sinful nature. But sinful nature, do you think is a thing or is it an idea? Is it spiritual or physical? Must be spiritual, yes, because it is a belief in a lie. And the core of sinful nature is the idea that we are born with. That is, I am God. Now you see, this is that what I thought that morning in my heart. Have you ever thought that you're God? Consciously? No. I have patients that they say to me, well, doctor, I never think like this. I never think I'm God. I say, no. Consciously you do never. But you would not sit here if you wouldn't think it. Because the issue of all our behavior is because we think we are gods. There are two things that in sinful nature are the most hindrance, I shall say, the most deceptive. And it is sinful nature takes possession of everything. Yes? Whose body is it? Whose wife is it? Whose child is it? Sinful nature is possessive. That's her main nature. Selfishness says, I possess. And if anything can be proven in you that you're not possessive anymore, half of your sinful nature is gone. You see, Job was proven in this. To him was taken all possessions. And how did he react? My possessions or not my possessions? Not my possessions. So Job had out his sinful nature. It was crucified. He did it away. So that's the first, is sinful nature is possessive. The second main point of sinful nature is that it thinks it is creator. We think things that we do come from us. So when we love a person, with which love do we love him? My love or another's love? We usually say it is my love. So this is the deepest thing in humanity. If we are the one that created love, we must be God. Because God is love. And we think subconsciously that when we love, we use our own means. This is very, very subtle, unconscious to us, but we can prove it, that it is not possible ever that you can use your own love. When you breathe, what do you breathe? Air and oxygen. Is that your production? You know, you would never say, oh, I inhale my oxygen. Because you would know it's not your production. Do you drink your water? Yes? Do you drink your water? Is it your production? Did you produce that water? At least when you're in the desert, you know you cannot produce it. Then the food. Is it your production? Not yours. So when it comes to love, all people think they love with their own love. So love, or the action of love, to be loving or to love, is my action. Like breathing is my action. But what I breathe is not mine. What I give in love does not come from me. Impossible to come from me. Now it would take me at least 2 nights to explain that, so I just shorten it up here, giving this short conclusion. The idea that I am God, we all show that we think that what we give to others comes from whom? From us. Why would you ever be disappointed after 46 years living with a husband that now leaves you? And why would you be so sad? Because you think you have invested 46 years, that now at old age your husband should have his life with a young girl and you are all alone. All your investment is gone. And you mourn yourself, your loss, because you did it from whom? From you. If you would never invested in 46 years something from you, would you have a need to mourn? No. I hope I don't lose you, because it's, yeah. So there is no need to mourn if you never ever produce anything, and if you never ever possess anything. So those are the 2 things, and they show us in our behavior, we behave ourselves like gods. Let me just, for the purpose of not being totally theoretical, explain that. I could, when I first started in my practice, and when I understood more and more about humanity, I said to God, Lord, there must be a root where all sin come out. Must there be a root? Yes? There must be a root where all things come out. And that root I found is I am God. But that root even is, you will see it's, yeah. So I could see that all our behavior, wrong behavior, comes from the idea that we are God. Would you ever be disobedient to God if you would not know it better than Him? Yeah? So disobedience itself means, God, I know it better. You don't know it as I know it as well. And that was the devil. The devil said, I know the things, how they should go better. So I am God is that place where we work out of it. And then all the acts here come out. But here is the acts that here come out. What is the worst behavior of a human fallen, of a fallen human being? What is the worst behavior? What is the worst in sinful nature as an outcome? We all like it, and it's in the world. What is it? What's the worst thing in the behavior as a God? But what proves that you think you're a God? Egoism? Atheism? Well, yes, atheism, that's very nice. Atheism thinks he is independent of a God. But let's seek, that's also an idea, but what's the behavior? It's controlling, or let's say it is his power over others. Why is power over others the worst? Because power over others, to control others, to press upon others, is divine or devilish? It's devilish. Yes? So how can we prove that all people have this behavior? Ever saw this behavior in you? That's the core of sinful nature. The behavior of sinful nature is you want to control others to do the right. When is sinful nature more deceptive? When you want to entice someone to do the wrong, or when you want to force someone to do the good? It would be always to force to do the good. So, power over others, when does it start? When does humans show this behavior? In the belly of the mother. Yes? And when they come out, did you ever see a child that does not want to control his parents? Do you? They all want to do that. From childhood, they start to show themselves as gods. I once had a lady, she came with her son. Her son was about 8 or 10 years. I can't remember exactly because it's a few years ago. And the son had a nervous tic. And the mother didn't know how to handle that nervous tic. I can't remember the tic exactly. But nervous tics have different, the one just cough, the other just do certain things, the other just shake their head or whatever they do. And the mother came with the nervous tic to me, and of course I know why people have a nervous tic, why the children have a nervous tic. They are missing something. Their nervous system is under attack. Yes? And it is under attack because they want to have power over others. Yes? So a child wants the good of his mother. And so it fights for its mother's rights because it wants to fix mother, because mother must be the best in the world. Yeah? Now this mother was not in control of herself, neither trying to educate her child. You see, there must be an authority, but there is only the authority of love. in this universe. And we don't know what the authority of love is, so we either are very controlling and dominant, or total on the other edge where we lose. You know, we say the child can do what he wants. Yeah? And those are two extremes that are not correct. Yes? The child needs an orientation. And so I told the mother that your child has no security because he is stronger than you are. Yes? So I talked to the mother because I sent the child out, and then the mother comes a few days later, I don't know exactly when she comes back, and she tells me, look, doctor, you were right. I went home, and in the evening when my husband came home, I talked to him and said, look, this is the behavior of our child, this is the cause. And they were sitting down in the living room while they were talking together. The son comes down from upstairs, and he comes and says, I am the boss. I am the boss. See, I am here the boss. Everyone wants to be the boss. Yes, we all want to control others for the good of others. And we don't know that is from the devil. There is no control in heaven. In heaven, everyone does the good because he is convinced and he wants it. He is one with the will of God. There is no dissension in will. Yes? There is in God, there is no control over others because love doesn't have that. Love only draws us to him. So power over others is that behavior that we all want. Why do we want money? That we might exercise power. Yes, I tell you, this is one of the greatest evil. You hardly hear a patient that doesn't say, my mother is controlling, is not controlling. Almost all mothers, dear mothers, they, in their goodwill for the good of the child, pushes and presses the children in the wrong way. And they don't even realize what they do. But the fruit in the children is seen. Because if you would know the needs of a child, that it can only act out of conviction, then education would be more hard or more easy. Because it's more easy to say, huh! But it's hard to gain the conviction, to gain the trust of the child. Now the second one, or another thing is, humans are judges. Did you ever judge? Did you ever judge? So what does judging mean? Who is the measure for whom? Who is the measure? For the, yes? I am the measure. Like I know the things have to be done, that's how it is correct. Yes? We put ourselves as measurement for all. Consciously? No. It just comes out of us. It is there. It's our sinful nature. We want to be worshipped. Do you know that? Do you need to be respected? Yes? Do you need that? Then you need to be worshipped. Do you need to be appreciated? Then you want to be worshipped. none of this you need. You only need to give it. Yes? But we are doing things, and what do we await after that? Applause. No, we do things because we want to be worshipped. You demand from others, they need to fulfill your need. I had a lady, she was 78 years old, and her mother, and she came to me because she had a cough for 1 year and 2 months. And didn't stop that cough. She had to chew all the time something because she, if not, she would have needed to cough continually. And she came, and I know that this coughing has no outside, I mean, it's no accident, no food problem, no, you know, it can only be a nervous thing that comes down from the cortex. And so I asked her what's heavy on her heart. And you know what she said? She said, my mother never appreciated my work. My mother never told me, well done. And her mother was dead for 20 years. She got cancer from that heart burden 20 years ago. For 10 years, her bladder, her urine bladder, was not functioning anymore well. She had to go every half an hour to the toilet because that was the thing. She couldn't keep her urine. And now she had the cough. So what does she want from her mother? To be worshipped. She wants from her mother appreciation. Is her mother obliged, or is her wanting correct or wrong? Does your mother owe you something? Does your mother owe you respect? Does your mother owe you to applaud you? Does your mother owe you to say, oh, thank you? Do you need that? So you see, in the Bible I read that Jesus says, if you have done all your service, how to consider yourself? Yes, how much praise do you need? None, because you are fulfilled in the service you do. Why should you get anything for it if the service itself is fulfilling? So, people, we ourselves are in a very bad situation. And so, what happened with the lady? I told her that she must love her mom, but her mom is dead. And she did something. It's an old case, but it's a very encouraging case. I explained to her, no matter what, she needs to love her mom. Her mom has no duties towards her, only she towards her mom. And we'll come later a little bit, if I hope tonight, to the law of respect to the parents. And she went home after the first session of counseling. It was the second time she came to me. And when she came the third time, after 3 weeks, her cough was gone. And her urine bladder functions, she said, since 3 weeks, it functions normally. What did she do? She did a simple thing. I told her, you need to pray to God that He should change your heart so that you see your mother, that you can love her. That what her mother did to you is not a stepping stone for you anymore. And she is a Catholic lady, and God takes everyone who comes to Him. And she just prayed in that night, when she went to bed, that simple prayer. And after she said that prayer, she was healed. Because she was willing to fulfill what? The commandment of God, to honor your parents. Because there is a promise. Is there a promise? Yes. The first commandment is a promise. Yeah? So let us, there is one point more that I say here and then we go on, is that we act and think we are God is that we give before we take. We give to receive. That shows that you have something to give before you take. The motivation of sinful heart is giving out of yourself, thinking that you don't take before you give. There is only one in this universe that gives before he takes. And that is God, because God has how many needs? God has no needs, so he just gives. Yes, out of whom? Of himself, because he is the source of everything. And now every creature cannot be like God, must be a channel that takes first to give. Now if the human gives first, he must automatically think he is God. You would never give first if you knew, oh, I took this and I gave it, so it doesn't come from me. You would never get angry because someone did not appreciate what you gave, because you give it from whom? Not from you. That's why the Bible says in the Sermon on the Mount, it says, when the people will see your good work, they will come to you and praise you. Isn't that? What did they say? They will glorify the Father. How? Because they see that the work that we have done are not our works, but are the works of God. So, as a Christian, how much praise should we expect? I hope we get it. Jesus never was dependent. He said, I do not take honor from man. But you cannot serve God as long as you can take honor from man. It's John 5. Yes? You remember that situation? In John 5, Jesus says, you take honor from man. I do not take honor from them. I do not need their appreciation. I do not need neither their acceptance nor rejection. I just need God's honor, because I want to do His will, not human will. Do you think it's easy not to want to be appreciated? Do you think that? It's such a battle to not want to be praised or not want to be... the human sinful nature longs for something that is not his. Because if I never give anything from me, why would I expect you should honor me? Why you should not honor my boss, from whom I take everything? Is that clear? Yeah. So, let's go back to our... So, when I think I am God, then the first thing is, in whom do I trust? Whom do I trust if I am God? Myself. Do you think God has trust in himself? Does a God need to trust? Generally, does God need to trust? No. You see, trust is only needed for a dependent being. Faith and trust, is only needed for a being that is dependent. God knows everything. He has everything. How should he trust? Now we say that he wants to trust us. Yes, he commits to us certain works to do, but is he not sure if he can do it to us or not? Is he sure or not? Yes, he's very sure. So, to trust in myself is something that is not even existent, but we do it. If we think we are God, we trust in myself, in ourselves. So, for whom then do I do what I do? For myself. Now let me put that question. I was not so long ago in a youth meeting, and I asked the young people, I said, for whom do you eat? What was the answer? So, for whom do you eat? Is it? When you go and eat, do you eat for God? I mean, are you aware for whom you eat? Because if this body is God's, then after whom do you orient what you put in this body? What you think, what you like, or what you know that the boss, I mean God, knows is best for it? You understand? People take ownership of their body, and so they eat what they want, when they want, how much they want. And they think they eat for themselves, because they think this is my body. You see, that lady I shared last night that has lost her arm because she cannot move her right arm. For 7 years, she cannot move the arm. She is now 54, and with 47 the accident happened. So when you're 47, you are in the best age you are. Yes? And if you're right-handed and at 47 you lose your right arm, how happy do you are? She had severe pain in the last years in this arm, so that she needed to take morphine. And I know that pain in that arm cannot come from the accident. Because the accident heals in 1 or 2 years, it's healed, and then yes, you're disabled, but you have no pain. But that strong pain that she had in that arm must come from her spirit, from a personal loss that she cannot undo anymore. She cannot get out of it anymore. So I sat with her in the church, because she is our sister, and I said to the sister, now, for whom did you use your arm before he was handicapped? For whom do you use your arm? In whose service? Is that your consciousness? No. You think you do a favor to God when you serve him, but it's not his arm. So she said, I had a good relationship with God until the accident, but since then God has punished me. I said, God is rescuing you. God wants to give you a blessing. We have here a brakeman. So God wants to help you to realize something. And so she was sad because she used that arm for whom? For herself. Isn't that an abuse of God's means? It's a hard word, is it? It's very hard to swallow to use God's arm for your own. If it was given to you to use it for his work that he has given to you to do. I tell you, to be unselfish is the hardest thing even to grasp for us to think. The principle of unselfishness is so deep that because of our selfish nature, we don't realize what it implies. You see, Jesus had to be abused physically that he could testify to the whole world, to the universe, that he did not belong to himself. He knew he was the Father's. And whenever someone hit him, he said, they deny my Father, not me. So I told to his sister, and I said, look, if this arm is God's arm, and he took the decision that he should put that arm to pension, to rest. You still have the left arm to work for him. But since she didn't use the arm to work for God, but she came to work for, she has children, she wants to earn money, she wants her children to go to school, to have a good education, and everything is focused on whom? On herself. Because the children are hers. You see? Do you think it's easy for her? I said to her, look, if you will see that this arm is God's arm, then who has the loss? God has the loss. So you can pity him, but not you. That would be right thinking, would it? I think that's reasonable. But you see, it's all for me. When I talked this to the young people, and I said, you shouldn't eat for yourself, but you should eat to do God's service, they said, it was strange for them. They're grown Adventists. But it's very strange for us to think what we put on the table or what we do with our hands is for God's service. I read this morning, and I know the quote from Ministry of Healing. It's a wonderful quote that says, Jesus never did a plan for himself. He took the plan from his Father. Now, tell me, does that mean that he lived unplanned? No. But he woke up and he did what the Father gave him to do. I have here a good manager. She sits outside there. And she gave me a sheet with the people that are scheduled for the counseling or consultation. Or she told me at 9 o'clock you do lecture. And from whom do I take that sheet? From her or from God? From God. So, because he makes my plan. Well, I planned to come here, but I didn't plan what specifically I should do every day. If I get an invitation, I go to that invitation, I go, because I take it from God. Because you don't plan for yourself. You are in the service of God. And I tell you, there is nothing better than being in the service of God. I promise you, he plans you so well, your day is very efficient, and you're tired when you go to bed. Because he's not the lazy one. And his servants, they're not on the streets doing nothing. They are busy. Because it's nothing wrong to be busy. It's good to be busy. But you must be busy in the service of God. You see, I was quite tired tonight and I had a schedule. And I'm so happy that God makes the schedule. The couple that should come for counseling could not come. And now my dear manager she said to another person that is tomorrow scheduled to come today. But since I was laying half dead, I said, well, she's scheduled for tomorrow, so I take her tomorrow. Now I rest. Because I take God's plan as for me, that when he cuts down something, he knows why. You see, God is a very good planner. But you must be in his service, that you know that he plans it for you. And then you're not complaining if it's too much, or if it's too less. You just do it because you know if it comes to happen, then you know He will give you the strength to do it. And then when you're too tired, He says, now rest a while because I'm managing this. I have this experience in my practice now for 12, almost 13 years. The patient, when I'm too tired, does not appear. It doesn't matter if he's sick, he's in the hospital, or he's in a traffic jam, or he just forgot. Just forgot. And then he calls me the next day and says, I forgot. I said, don't worry, it's all fine. Thank you that you forgot. He's embarrassed, but I am happy because I had rest. Because I know someone managed that for me to give me that rest that I need to be efficient in service. So let us be clear. Are we as children of God in His service or in our service? Do we eat for ourselves or do we not eat for ourselves? Do we do anything for ourselves or nothing for ourselves? Because that would be the motivation of love. Okay? So I hope I didn't lose you. So if my motivation is that I do things for myself, then how am I doing them? I give. But for which purpose do I give the money to my wife? That she should keep them well. I want to receive a benefit. And if I do not receive, I am in loss, but I cannot stop my wife to buy or not to buy, or can I? Can I? No. It's impossible. Try it. It's not possible. You cannot stop anyone to do what he wants to do. But here I am, out in the world, and God makes clear to me, whose money is she spending? Okay, Lord, it's God's money. And then He makes clear to me, it's not a big deal. You overemphasize it. It was just one day before we had to leave to the States for 10 days, and she was just careful enough to have those kitty cats to get their food. And it was not the whole box, it was just the 3 little boxes up there. Yeah? So I was totally, through my prejudice, how you call this? Prejudice, to my prejudice, I was, you know? And then you go to God, and He makes it plain. He says, so who am I? I am a creature of God. Yes? If I am a creature of God, in whom do I trust? That's automatically, because I cannot trust in myself. I trust in God. And if I'm a creature of God, for whom do I do what I do? It is in God's service. For Him I don't need to do it, but we say we do it for Him because we do it in His service. And doing things in God's service, that's the motivation of love. And the law says, you take from God, that's why you trust Him. And where is the gain? In the giving to my wife. And if she loses it, if she spends it unnecessary, or she, how is that word in English? She uses it for not what it was. It's a waste, yes? She wasted it. Whose loss is it? God's loss. So I have how much personal loss? None. And then if I have no personal loss and God is in loss, I can go to my wife, I can still speak to her, but then it will be totally different than as if I go with my personal loss. So you see, if I would have gone into my house, how would I have spoken to my wife? even though I would have tried to be gentle and soft. You know, she knows me exactly. On the voice, you can never hide it. And if you live with someone 33, 34 years, he knows you in the dreams. You know, when she sees you walk, come in, she might even hear how you open the door, and she knows there is danger coming. And then how she's working. Yes? So I would have gone in, and I would have not been a pleasant person. So I was in the woods, and I said, Lord, and he calmed me down. He said, you're a creature. Yes, you're responsible how much you give. You know that? You're responsible. If you further give for people that are doing it wrong, you have to be also responsible. So you have to know how to do it. So it's not like you give it and have no responsibility. Yeah? You have to think before. You cannot waste God's money. If you know people are going to throw it away, will you give it? No, because you know God doesn't want that with His money to be done. So you have to think and ask God to know what to do. So there is much that we have to learn in our relationship to God, how to do the things. Yeah? So I would have not been the person if I would went in there. But after 2 days, we were already here in the States, I could address the topic. And so she could tell me why she bought those extra boxes, and we could handle the things in a, how I call this, in a good way. I mean, in a not only civilized, but you know, positive. It's not personal. It's just to the subject. You deal with things because you have to deal with them, but it's nothing because you have done me something wrong. You have not worshipped me and didn't do what I have expected from you. So I learned a big lesson that morning, because my selfish heart, just in seconds, in milliseconds, it betrays you, because it does not go with, I first take from God, because it thinks it takes from, whose power is it that I use? So, how is it? So I will show you a PowerPoint presentation that shows this law of life. And I hope we understand it. The law of life says simply, you have to take, that is a dependency, and you never take for the purpose to take, but for the purpose to give. And out of that comes the fruit. Yes? God never gives anything that does not bear fruit. And so when we do something, when we take from Him to give, that must bear fruit, because He will expect fruit from us, will He? He gave us a vineyard, and He will say, I come to take the fruit. So the giving of us must bear a result. This is the law of life. You're dependent to take that you may give, that something comes out. And this law is general for every function that we have in the whole universe. This is the most basic law of function. Since nothing can live from itself except God, everything must first take, but it never takes to take, but just to give, that it might be fruit, because God is give, love is giving. So that is the law of life in nature. Dependency in nature is without choice. You see, when you give your stomach the food, can he choose and say, oh, this is not healthy, this is healthy? Can he say, this makes good blood, this makes bad blood? Can he do it? No. He must take what you put to him and gives it, and then we will see the result and the fruit of it. Now we come to the law of life in the spirit. Now the spirit has the same law, but there is a slightly difference. He is dependent and he must take, but it must be by choice, because in the spirit nothing can enter or penetrate if he not takes it. And he takes it only if he trusts that is a good thing again to take, that he might give. So you need to choose if you do something or not do, but it is according to whom you trust what you choose or not. So the stomach doesn't need any trust, does he? No, he functions like a machine. Everything, the plants, they don't need trust. Only the spirit needs trust, because he needs to choose from where he takes to give. Yeah? So never the spirit does something that he does not decide itself. His decision is subconscious because the law is in the heart, but it still is only by choice. Now, let us look. In the heart of man, there are only two actions. The give and take. The take and give. And now the law says, you must take that you might give. Now what is the change of selfishness? Selfishness, the law of death, gives to take. It's just a switching of the order. That's all. And you see, how is it in the world, it said? It is a take and give, or it's a give and take? It's always a give and take, because you give first, that you then take. So it's the opposite. In nature, there is nothing that is made for the purpose to take. You know that? Nothing, except the selfish heart of man thinks the purpose is to take. Our heart is contrary to the whole law of nature. To the basic law of nature, our heart is contrary to it. Because we go the other direction than the whole nature goes. You see, even what we create is not possible that we create for the purpose to take. Why did we create these chairs here, or this bank, this to give or to take? This to give. Why is the piano created? Or to give or to take? Yeah, so why do we have a car? It's all to give. They must take first, but they are therefore to give. There is nothing that is different. We all need first to take that we might give. But the changed heart of man, in its deception, thinks it has something to give before it takes. That's the law of death. And she wants to give that she might receive. Now, yes, we will still do it tonight, and then we'll repeat it. So, very simple, the law of life in the heart. So this thing here shows just, the type here is subconscious, the other is conscious. So we have in the heart just two actions, take, to, give. And that is the law of life. Now, this is so important that we understand, before we take, we always must, before we give, we always must take first. Now, since this is subconscious, we don't see where we take from. So when we give, that feeds the body. That's why I can observe on the body from where you took. You see? On your body reactions, you can see from whom you took. And I give you a short example of this lady that she is also a doctor, and her husband left her after 11 years of marriage. She was about 28, 29, and he was her first love. They have a child together, and she was devastated when he left her, like many ladies are. And so She came to my seminary a year ago to my meetings, and I could counsel her, and she understood the process and started to put it into practice. And I was this year again in that church, and the elder of that church said, if anything that you did last year, the meetings here, it restored the life of that doctor. Because they all knew, they thought that she will pass away, how devastated she was because her husband left her. Now, she took the message, she put it into practice, but about 3 months later, she calls me and says, something happens and I cannot stop weeping. And she said, I prayed I should never happen. Today I met my husband in the grocery store, and he was with his girlfriend. And while he was passing me, he just said to his girlfriend, this is my ex-wife. They were not even divorced. This is my ex-wife. Now, how did she perceive that? She perceives it as a great humiliation. Now, how? I served you for 11 years. I gave my life for you, and now you pass me by and you say, this is my nothing? Would you handle it? So she stopped, she started weeping and couldn't stop, so she called, and I could talk to her that evening, and I said to her, okay, the deception must be in the heart. And you know the deception is always because we give to take. That's why I said to her, when you loved your husband, how much did you give him the 11 years? How much did you give him while you loved him? What was her answer? Everything. You know, when women love, they give everything. I'm a man, I cannot say that, but women, when they love, they just, they give everything. They give their service, they are kind, they iron, they bake, they do, they are love, they give everything. But why do they give it? For who do they give it? Do they give it to give because they took the gift from God, or they give it from themselves? So, when you give all, how do you feel? No, when you give all, in the moment you love someone and you give him all, how do you feel? Good, satisfied. Your body here, when you feed the body with love, when you sacrifice yourself, you always feel good. Yes, you always feel good. So, there's nothing bad to give. You know that? That's life when you give. There comes only the test. From where did you give? So I asked her, when you give all to him, how much did you give from yourself? And there are only two answers, all or nothing. So she answered the right answer because she's smart. She said, nothing. And I said, then you can stop weeping. In the moment she realized it, she stopped weeping. The power was gone. All that grief was disappearing because for what do you weep? Only for what you have invested and is gone. But if you gave nothing from yourself, why should you weep for yourself? Because she was not weeping for him, poor guy, was she? She was not in prayer and saying, Lord, help him, please, he's lost. She was praying for herself because she thought that all her investment is now gone, wasted. So the problem in our heart is we don't know where we take from. The battle is not in giving. The battle is where you take. Because the giving you might see, the taking not. The taking only comes out when you are in stress. and you reveal who is the source of your action. So who was the source of her action? No? Yourself can never be a source. Who was the source of her action that she could not stop weeping? Her husband. Her husband is her God. She takes from her husband. See, at the beginning of this year, I had a patient that got liver hepatitis C. She's a 34-year-old lady, and I know that even hepatitis C does not come from anything else than on a burden of a heart. That's from my own experience. I had one patient in 2011 that got healed from hepatitis C by being reconciled to her husband and loving him again. Her hepatitis C disappeared. So I have many patients. I saw many patients with hepatitis C, and I know if the virus alone is not the issue. Even I was in Asia, when you get malaria, it's not enough to be the malaria there. It needs more than a malaria bacteria. Yeah? That you should have something or not. It is not enough, the bacteria, to be present. So she has this hepatitis C, and I was once at her home, and I saw her behavior between her husband, and you know then much more than you want to know sometimes. And now she calls me and says, I have hepatitis C. Now I asked her, what's on her heart? Where is the deception? Because you know the deception is only in the taking. You take from the wrong source. You don't know where you take from. So then I told her, then she said to me, my problem, I have only one problem. And it's enough, you have one. After she got married with 18, 19, so very young age. In Romania, that's how they get married. And so she got married at a young age, and after 3 months, her kind husband says to her, you know why I married you? Just out of pity. You poor girl, you know, I had so much pity for you. So I took you because, however, no one would have taken you. Would you like that? Why not? Who has the problem? She or him? Him has the problem, but now, who has the problem? She has the problem. And since then, she has a burden in her heart. And she says, everything functions. I am doing everything, my duty as a husband, as a wife. But when it comes to intimacy, it stops. I cannot do it. Because my body rejects him. I said, it's not your body. It's your spirit, your heart. Because you are taking from whom? From him. His love is for you important, not the love that you take from God to give him. And I explained to her that he is her God. Easy to take it? Sometimes my patients don't like me. But I cannot do anything else. It's the law. But she doesn't do, does she do that because she wants to? Is that an intention? Does she want to break the law just unintentionally? No. She breaks the law unintentionally. She wants to be faithful to her husband. She wants to do the best. But here, because it's subconscious, what can she not do? She cannot give. Because she thinks he is the source of her love. And you cannot love a selfish person, you know that? You might outwardly do all you can consciously, but when it comes to such a thing like intimacy, you are lost. Because you cannot. So she was a heart burden, and And her husband is not really a kind guy. She said to me, you see, I just tell you one scene how he behaves to me. When he heard that she is sick, that she has this, he called a friend, and in front of her he said to his friend, you know, my wife is deadly sick. I better go to find another one. Would you like that guy? Is he sympathetic to you? Would you just say, oh, this should be a member of our church? Would you? Even in me, something went wrong. I said, that guy is not worthy. But what did I say to her? What did she need to do with him? Love him for the sake of the liver? And I told her to watch all my presentations and put them into practice. And she did. She is one of those ladies I like. They just take you, like this old lady, this 78-year lady that just took me by my word and said, she went home, she prayed, and it worked. And I have others, they come 1,000 times and say, did you do it? I cannot. No, then you lose. Yeah? And so she went to look all the presentations. Then she called me again, and I said once more what she had to do. And then she started to love that not so kind husband that just treats you like you are worthy for something or unworthy. He just worthy for his pity. But does he do that on purpose? He's also a blind person in the deception of the devil. And so there is something that she has to do in her heart. If she would take from God love, could she love the one that is not worthy? Yes. You always prove in the giving where you take from. Because you can never give except you take it from somewhere. It's the most important principle that we need to understand. And she started to take from God and give to Him and to love Him. And you know, she went, I think it was 6 or how much weeks later, she went to do a blood withdrawal. And her virus was much lower than before. And I visited them this summer. And I consulted her once more and said, look, I encourage you, this man must be loved. No matter how bad he is, no matter how selfish, no matter how he looks down to you as you are a little piece of nothing, if you love him, you conquer everything. Because then you prove you are bound to God, not to your husband, as a source of life. And she immediately again put it into practice. Because there was a dissension there when I visited them, I could see it between them, and they, you know, these things, do you think you can change them in a day? I tell you, your past you can leave behind in a second, but to change your heart and your behavior daily with the one that are not perfect, that takes a battle with God and with selfish nature to subdue that which is evil in you. That takes a battle. So she's putting it into practice, and they didn't want to take her into the hospital when you have hepatitis C. But since her viruses went back, now she can go to work in the hospital. So it is important that we understand our mind is guiding everything. But it's guiding according to our motivation. And our motivation must be love. And if we would take from God, what would come out? God's words, God's works. That's why Christ says, believe in me for the works I do, because which works were they? The Father's work. And I think that we need to understand. And my time is gone. I didn't explain to you the law of life, how it comes in relationships, because we will see that then tomorrow. Now I know tomorrow I will have the sermon here. I don't know if I should do it then or not. I will still think about, but I must do it, and then I will repeat it tomorrow night a little bit again. But we need to know where the battle is. And the law of the Ten Commandments is showing us exactly where the battle is. The battle is not in giving. The battle is in from where you take. Because where is dependency? Where is dependency? It's dependency is only when you take. On the giving part, you are independent. So I think I have this here somewhere, but I can write it here with my pen. So here is dependency. And here is independency. So, would be very good. So, on the one side, you have to take, because you're a dependent being, you have to take by trust. Only by trust you can take, as on the spiritual land we speak about the spirit here. But at the place you give, you're never dependent. And your husband should be what place? To take or to give? Shall I finish with a story? I just had the privilege to do the sermon on my oldest foster son's wedding. They invited me, they gave me this privilege, and I took it like coming from God to have the sermon on their wedding. And guess about what did I speak? It's only about take and give. You see, this is my, since I know the law is the center of everything I speak. So I took with me two things, two items in the sermon. I couldn't take the PowerPoint, I couldn't take the things. So you cannot go to a wedding with the PowerPoint. So I took a big box of ointment, and it's 1 kilo, yeah? The biggest I could find from the pharmacy. And I put some ointment there. I didn't buy the expensive ointment, but I bought some Nivea, put it in. And I wrote on that box, I said, this is eye ointment, to know who you are. Yes? Because that's Revelation 3:18. Jesus says we need eye self. Eye self, this is the word I missed. So eye self. And I preached the whole sermon about the I self, because what's most dangerous in marriage? To be confused where to take and where to give. And I asked them before, why do you marry? Do you marry her to give her something or to take something? Why do you marry? Now I tell you, since selfish nature, the law of death always makes you to marry for to take. That's why your marriage is your destiny. Because you take, you marry for to take. So they didn't answer it correctly, so I said, you need I self. Because you need to know, marriage was made just to give. And it was not even to give to her, but they together should work in the service of God. We think that relationship should be a two-way. No, we take from God, and together we work for one purpose, that is for God's service, not for each other. But of course, love does not exclude that we are helping, that we are kind, you know. You do all those, because you don't take from the other one. So I explained to them, because in marriage, why do we fight? To give or to take? You never have a fight just for to give. Never ever. Every fight you have in marriage is because you want to take. It's impossible if you want to give to fight. Impossible. So that I explained to them, and then I said I brought to them a big bread. You know, in Germany we have real bread. So There are places here where you have real bread too. But that crusty bread, you know, I was grown up in Romania with the good bread, and Germans only have the better bread than the Romanians. But it's a 4 kilo, that is, how many, 8 pounds bread? Yes, the biggest one I could find. It's my favorite bread. I eat every day when I have a chance. So that bread I took with me, and I said, this is the love of God, and symbolize. Did the Bible say that the bread is, Jesus is the bread, God is the bread? Yeah. So I took the symbol and said, this is the love of God. If you need love, you eat from this bread, but not one from another. You eat together from the bread, but you don't eat each other up. And if you know that, then the bread you have for to take, and your wife you have for to give. And the same thing is for the wife. You have the bread where you take from God, and the other where you give. So this is the hardest thing for us to even understand. You know that? Now, speaking to many thousands of people in personal counseling, whenever I explain the law of the 10 Commandments, you will see tomorrow that this is the 10 Commandments. They guide and govern all our relationships. None of our human relationship was made to take. None of them. Neither. There is an exception where a child takes from mother because it cannot go to God first. But all this, the taking and the giving, is that what matters. And we don't see it. Because when you marry, you think you're not dependent. But you are. You take from the other one because it's subconscious, it's in your heart. And God cannot explain to us the deception of our heart except He brings us in difficulties that He might show us the law. And the law of the 10 Commandments was given that it should open our eyes about the law of death that is in our hearts. That's the sermon for tomorrow, so that's the introduction. And I hope to see you then, and let us understand this is hard work. Because our hearts are deceitful above all things and desperately wicked. And they are deceitful in the way that we trust in man to take rather than in God. And this is where the battle is, where we need to understand. This is also where disease comes, where the most diseases come, is because we take from a human instead from a God. We trust a human for our security, instead of trusting our Heavenly Father for everything that He has promised and gives. We just need to take it and put it into action. By giving it, then it will bear fruit. So, I finish here and see you tomorrow.